So we've heard a lot about the creative industry's training facilities, but you have an extraordinary career, and you're an Oscar nominee. You're produced the highest rated show on the BBC. A wonderful collaborator. Your history with BAFTA is amazing. I'm going to ask a really pointed question now. Why should the UK care about the screen industries?
Well, I think you talk very eloquently about the economic benefits, and I think that's plain to see. If you look at the amount of money generated by the screen industries, it's extraordinary, nearly 20 billion in terms of funds generated. And but I think it's also, for me, it's also about soft power. It's about the fact that we are a nation of storytellers, and at the moment we lead the way in terms of telling our stories around the world, and long may that continue. I work across film and TV, so I produced 1917, which was a big First World War film a couple of years ago. I make Call the Midwife.
Just the 10 Oscar nominations.
Just the 10. Didn't win that many though.
Better to be nominated than to win, I always think.
Exactly. I make Call the Midwife, which we sell in over 200 countries around the world. And those are quintessentially English stories, British stories. They speak about our own history, and the fact that we can then sell that around the world, and people around the world love those stories, I think is great for us as a nation. So it's not just an economic thing for me. And as you said, it's a great industry to work in. It's the industry. I've got a 19-year-old daughter. Half of her friends seem to want to work in some form of the screen industries. A lot of them want to be actors, but actually, a lot of them want to work behind the camera. A lot of them are interested in directing, cinematography. The people here, this whole place is testament to the skill base that has built up in the UK. Over the years, from Roger Deakins, who's a cinematographer I've worked with a lot, to Christy Wilson Cairns, who's a younger screenwriter. They all come through the NFTS. They've all been nurtured here. So we are already ahead, but there is a massive shortage. At the moment, we can't get a production accountant because there aren't any available. There are literally none available. Everyone we've gone after in the last week for a new show, it gets snapped up the minute you offer them the job. They've been offered something by Netflix or somebody else. So we really do need to concentrate on training up the next generation.
Well, and anybody who's had been sort of around noisy 8-year-olds, they pick up a camera before they pick up a keyboard or they pick up a pen.
Yeah.
So that I think is with this generation is really empowered to use kind of narrative storytelling in a very different way. So just to pivot a little bit about requirements. So I went to Mission Impossible 8 at Longcross the other day, which is kind of surprising. They've managed to spend $500 million in basically what is Bagram Air Base. Only Tom Cruise could really do something like that. It is genuinely one of the most heartbreaking things when you see literally the best people in the world working in a muddy field. You've worked at Longcross.
Well, we've had Call the Midwife shooting there for the last decade, and bloomin' Tom Cruise in his bloomin' helicopter coming in every 5 minutes disrupting us. So I could tell you a story or two about him, but no, Longcross is a case in point. We were very loyal, regular users of Longcross, but then Netflix came in and obviously had an exclusive deal with the studio, took over the section where all our sets were, and so we just had to take the whole lot down and move them, and Longcross gave us another bit of the studio, but it meant rebuilding the whole lot at astronomical costs, because there's just no space. The two big TV shows that I made in the last decade, Penny Dreadful and Britannia, we couldn't find studio space in the UK. We ended up shooting one in Prague and the other in Ireland because there was no studio space available. Empire of Light that we've just shot, again, even though ultimately it was funded by Disney, it was a Searchlight picture, we couldn't get into Pinewood, even though they have an exclusive deal with Pinewood. There was no space, so we ended up building a temporary soundstage in Margate. So, I know we're not talking just about Marlow today, but there is a dearth of studio space at the moment, and the capacity to really, really increase the industry, because if they don't come here, they'll just they'll up sticks and go to Budapest or somewhere else.
Yeah, and there's something also which is quite complicated to explain. Above and below the line are two things that are very different. Obviously, above the line is something that happens, kind of in wonderful institutions like here, but below the line is quite kind of more complicated. So, these 20,000 people need to have some on-set experience. How do we cope with that kind of volume without actually breaking the production environment? Is there a way? Is there a way we can think about that?
Yeah, well, it is difficult. I mean, we, as a company, we always take on as many trainees as we can, and Screen Skills has been brilliant about, funding trainee places. There are various schemes that individual studios put in place to do that. But, it can be difficult for a production to manage if you take on 3 trainees. It's quite a lot to properly look after those people. And one of the problems historically that the UK has had is that we're quite good at getting people into the industry, but you've got to then support them to stay in the industry, particularly people who are not traditional, whose families haven't worked.
Well, let's face it, stale male pale.
Yeah, exactly. People like you. I think if you don't have that network, or you don't know, you don't come from generations of people who've worked in the screen industry, it's really tough. You might get your first job, but then what do you do? So, I mean, BAFTA has been working hard looking at this and developing schemes like BAFTA Elevate, which was aimed at female directors, because again, we have a big problem with a lack of diversity in terms of women in leading roles still in the industry. I mean, when I started out extraordinarily 30 years ago, who could believe that? I was a small, tiny child. I think I worked with one female director, Antonia Bird. She was the only person I came across, and didn't see a single boom op, not a single production designer who was a woman. And now it's much, much better. If you look at our Call the Midwife production team, they're completely, well, there's probably actually far more women than men, but and they're very diverse as a workforce. But that takes a lot of support and effort, and making sure that the women who come in out of film schools like this then stay in the industry and carry on to rise up the ranks.
And obviously there are essential things like mentorship and pastoral care and all those things, which as an industry we've always been pretty bad about.
And childcare.
Yeah. Oh God, yes. I mean that would make so much difference.
Yeah.
As we said, there are long days. I mean, just personally, I had to, as a 22-year-old, I had to babysit Hollywood executives, unless you're prepared for that, it's quite complicated, and it's a very dynamic sector. I think one of the things that you're really known for is cultivating British and global talent. I've left the list of the amazing people that you work with. Go and get it. No, I know. but as everybody from Spielberg to Peter Kosminski and obviously Sam Mendes, all the on-screen incredible. Obviously Michael Ward's amazing performance in the last movie. But if you look at the list of people that you've worked with, it's just remarkable. And what's your view about why us Brits do things so well as creative collaborators? Is there a
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I mean, the language, it's an obvious thing to say, but we kind of own the language. So I mean, I'm sure you get this. I still get when I go to America, the kind of slight adoration for people in Hollywood who think that I speak properly and use the language correctly. But there is a,
there's a sort of superpower in that, isn't there?
There is a superpower. No, but there is a kind of inbuilt advantage that we have, and that also people want to work here. American cast are delighted to come and work in the UK. They really think it's a great perk, as opposed to certain other places in Europe where they're not quite so keen to go and work. But I think
that's also true of other territories around the world. I was speaking in LA to somebody who said they couldn't get movie stars to go to Sydney because actually they don't want to be the one movie star in town.
Yeah, well that's probably true.
And so we were just talking before about pre-production for Midwife, which is obviously now an amazing institution. But what was the? You were just explaining how you basically had to you were struggling to find the right people to come and contribute.
Yeah, because there's a massive skills shortage already. I mean, the idea that we need 20,000 by 2025, I think we need another 20,000 now. You know, there are we're prepping a new comedy with Armando Iannucci for HBO at the moment, and you know, even, which is a kind of, you would have thought, what a dream job. Who's not going to want to do that? But you know, people are being offered other gigs which are even better paid, or you know, or maybe longer contracts. So you know, and Sam Mendes is directing this. You know, even that team, it's hard to get the people that you want because there's so much work out there. I mean, I know I'm saying that there's masses of work, but actually there could be even more. But we just need to grow it in a sustainable way. We need to increase the training, and we need to increase the space that we have in the UK in terms of studio space.
Well, the really interesting thing about that 20,000 figure is it's a gross figure. So actually, what it takes account of is the people who are being burnt out by the exhausting conditions. So, as you were saying, you know, continuing and making sure that there's, you know, kind of a track record for people to have sustainable careers.
Yeah.
That means that we're shedding a lot of crew who bring that expertise, and they just simply don't want to travel too far each day, and they don't want to burn themselves out.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people love. I mean, we all love Buckinghamshire, you know, because it is the best place to work. It's, you know, there's so many opportunities here, and you know, it not just people living in Bucks, but I live in Oxfordshire. You know, it's great. It's a really easy commute. And it's just a great place to work. So the more you can do to kind of encourage that, the better, all of you decision makers.
Well, thank you very much for coming today, and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert.